Friday Heaters. Welcome to the Friday Heaters podcast. We are here with Meredith and Adam, owners and operators of the gallery Moskowitz Bayse. We're going to talk about running a gallery, the art industry, the state of play. Let's heat it up.
All right.
Got the intro. Right. Shades off.
Shades off.
Meredith and Adam, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast with me today.
So excited to be here.
How is the season treating you guys?
So beautiful.
There's rain in the forecast, I hear.
Yep.
We love rain in LA.
That marine layer just rolling on in.
Character builder. We need a little bit of character building, I feel like, when we get sunshine all the time.
Yeah, totally. It's overcast, which is special.
So special. Mm-hmm. Well, now that the rest of the country is pissed off at us for starting the podcast with that discussion, I just wanted to, when I first thought of bringing you guys on the podcast, I think a lot of our audience is not going to be familiar with the business of running a gallery. I've gotten to know you guys over the years, and I think it's very unique that you guys are a husband and wife running a gallery. And so maybe today, could you just talk us through, like, what is the basic business model of operating a gallery?
I think every gallerist asked that question will answer it differently, which I think is one of the things that makes our business so wild and kind of nuts. Everybody starts a gallery for a different reason. We both got into this business because we wanted to live a life in proximity to artists, and mine being the sort of market building end of things, Adam's being his own, which he can talk about. We ended up in a gallery.
Yeah.
I think that with the overlap is community building. I mean, we're both interested in surrounding ourselves with artists and thinkers. And it's not just visual artists that you come into contact with having a gallery. Even the people that you sell art to can be extremely fascinating. Everybody from architects and doctors and lawyers to, finance people and everything in between. So that's something that you don't think about either, but it is like a really broad community, and you're centering it around kind of a core of artists. From my perspective, I think that almost like Meredith said, everybody you ask that question to is going to tell you that there are many art worlds.
Okay.
There's a whole gallery universe that exists to sell Japanese miniature toys. And I don't know anything about their business model. I don't even know, I couldn't tell you what one of those things is worth or why one is worth more than the other.
Yeah.
So that's an art world, but it's not the one that I know.
Yeah.
Ours is really focused on working with artists, most of them alive, being a part of the studio practice and helping an artist realize their best work. It's something that is really, really core to us. I studied music production, which people think is really weird for how did you get into the art world? But as a music producer, you sit behind the boards and your job is to get the best performance out of the artist. That's a great take. Let's do it again. Maybe a little bit better on the chorus, but and that's kind of what we end up doing now. It's like our job is to make sure that our artists are able to realize their work to the best of their possible ability.
Yeah. So riffing off of that, music analogy, my background being in the music industry as well and being in bands in my 20s and 30s, I often associate galleries to record labels. So you guys have a roster of artists that you have signed to your gallery. Is there formal contracts when you do that?
It depends on the artist. It
Yeah.
depends on the time in their career. It depends on how we start the relationship. And it's evolved quite substantially over the 10 years we've been doing it.
Okay.
We've never called them contracts. We've only called them agreements. We, have a standard artist agreement that sets out parameters for what the artist is entitled to based on our 50% of what we take from a sale on a primary market basis. And, it's everything from archive and data management to sort of exposure and promotion of the work to what the gallery is responsible for expense-wise to, whatever else. And those conversations are fluid and they really evolve and change depending on the artist and what they need. And as I said, how far they are into their practice. So those agreements looked very different when the gallery was just starting, and it was, primarily the program was built for artists that were doing a first or a second show out of school. As the gallery's grown, we work with artists who are much further along. So obviously those things look different, especially when there are other galleries involved.
Which is a big part of our model too, working with other galleries. And that's another thing that in that agreement, it outlines. I think a lot of artists are very unclear as to how that collaboration is supposed to work. And we try and make it as clear as possible. I mean, there's always going to be hiccups, and then you're always going to have to kind of re-articulate something or find a new way to work around something as something arises. But as a place to start, if we're going to represent an artist, if we want to do that, I mean, like she said, it's evolved over the years, and a lot of what's evolved too for us is really knowing all that it entails to represent an artist and what is needed from us to do that best. It's a really fine needle to thread, actually. You know, the personality has to match, and we also have to be really behind the work, 110%. And that's in any kind of discursive direction that it may go. You know, we've been doing this for just over 10 years now together as business partners, and our way of kind of finding how to thread that needle has become a lot more articulated between the two of us. And intuitively too, not just, you know, verbally, but we now intuitively know what we're looking for when it means working with an artist on that long-term basis. And we're a lot more comfortable, I think, working with artists maybe on a little bit of a short-term basis to begin with before we jump into bed, so to speak, and say, let's go for this for the long haul. Yeah. You know, it's like, I think we used to be there was just this fervor of like, yeah, we're going to sign artists. We gotta build the roster. And we always talk about like, how can we build a roster? Like, we're looking for this type of artist. Like, maybe we need more sculpture. Maybe we need more installation work. You know, like, how do we round out the program? We talk about these things a lot, but we talk about them a lot and we act a lot slower now.
Yeah.
And I like that pace. I mean, it's funny, it's like everyone wants to go faster and faster. I feel like bizarrely, I mean, maybe it's cannibalizing our business, but we tend to go slower and slower. You know, it's like...
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that our job can be sort of siloed into incubation and amplification in these like two sort of
interesting
buckets. When we first started the gallery 10 years ago, incubation for both the gallery and the artists across the board was sort of the key. And it was doing that in tandem between the gallery and the studio, a sort of rising tide floats both boats, you know, approach. But now it's much more like who needs incubation and who needs amplification. And what the gallery needs is sort of more like some kind of musical score that's kind of on different lines and needs to kind of be
analogies. I love all of them.
Harmony. Yeah, well,
let's keep it going.
And so, and because everybody's sort of now at a different stage of their career, and the gallery's at a different place, you know, I think Adam and I still operate on a slower pace than sort of the status quo, but that has grown really in response to what our particular artists need and require. You know, we are a very homegrown operation. And so, you know, that approach started out as necessity, but really it's evolved in tandem with our artists and their approach. Everybody that we work with makes their work with their hands pretty much alone in their studios. Okay. Which means that on the whole, the making of the work on a slower scale than much of what we see coming out of many studios of artists who are working in their late 20s, 30s, and 40s now.
Those examples being people that have like teams and assistants and are able to produce more.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that Adam and I are really drawn to is this intimate relationship with whatever material our artists are working with, respectively. And across the board, that has led to a very specific type of a hermetic practice, regardless of the medium or the school that they've come from or whatever.
It's not like it's a prerequisite where like you can't have studio assistants. I mean, some people have studio assistants that we work with, not a lot, and if they do, it's like, you know, there's all kinds of things studio assistants can do to help out a practice, especially as it grows. That's not making a painting for you. That said, I just think that it's where we've kind of, in a weird way, you just wake up one day and you kind of find yourself in a place and you're like, I guess this is who we are, you know, like that's like, I guess we're attracted to people that like, we want to have material conversations with our artists, and we want them to be able to tell us why that material is transformative or how they're transforming it. Not like when I ask you about a material and you're like, well, I don't know. I just wanted it to be Cookie Monster, you know. I don't know why I picked Cookie Monster, but you know what I mean? It's just like something about being intimately familiar with the hand and the eye and the mind and it all connecting is what kind of lights our fire. So it makes us excited about the work, therefore we're better at selling it. You know, like there's, it would be one thing to like, sometimes I wish we could be a little bit more mercenary. That's just not the case. I always joke I'm a pretty bad salesman, but if I really love the artist and the artwork and I know it really well, I can just sell you anything. It's a big reason, weirdly, why I was drawn to start a gallery when I was 24. My parents were like, you should go work for another gallery. You don't know anything about galleries. You studied music. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, you don't have a trust fund. What are you going to do? Like, and I was like, I can't go work for another gallery because inevitably I'm going to be standing in front of, for a show of an artist, and I'm going to be telling the client, like, this painter's, I don't know, it's like B+, C-. Like, it's not my favorite thing in the world. I think that, like, if you want to, and that's obviously I'd be fired immediately. You can't do that. That's not what you hire a salesperson for, or a sales director. So I just didn't have another choice in a weird way.
Is it kind of out of necessity then at the start when you're, Meredith, I think you referenced you're working with first or second show out of grad school. That's typically, for those that are not as familiar, that's like kind of the progression is like choose to go to art school or art grad school, and then...
Typically, I mean, we started the gallery with a sort of sketch of a mandate or a sort of like, raison d'etre. And a big part of that was to weave an interdisciplinary program that was rooted in artists of our generation. That all sounds very fancy the way I just said it. And at the time, it was just like, who are our friends who are making art that we're interested in? That ended up being woven together into this thing that is now programmatically really clear. For instance, we kept gravitating towards these artists that went through Cooper Union for undergrad. And it wasn't age specific. They ranged over 15 years of graduating years. It wasn't medium specific, but we found ourselves sort of gravitating to these particular artists that went through this particular program. And the more we learned about them and their friends and their cohorts respectively, and then the institution itself, the more we came to sort of discover that, position of that institution all the way through, 2016, 17 or so.
It's changed.
And what is Cooper Union for those?
Sorry. Cooper Union is what was a free undergraduate arts program, arts and architecture and engineering program in New York.
The what Meredith is referring to in terms of like what kind of an ethos of a school is, or why that would be, why we found ourselves gravitating towards it. A really easy thing to point to is that at the time, I think, like she said, up until like 2017 or so, it was one of the few art schools that to apply, you had to submit a portfolio, like your drawings. What do your drawings look like? So,
and all the way through the undergraduate curriculum, you had to be making things. You couldn't just be thinking about things. You had to be thinking about things in tandem with making things.
Right.
And that sounds very basic, but actually for the time in which we opened the gallery, that was sort of renegade or radical in its conservative approach, and remains so. I mean,
these things kind of ebb and flow. It's a funny thing about, I guess, trends, but also or just stylistic, proclivities of an era. I think in the 90s, you can really see this like big blossoming of conceptual art. And specifically in Los Angeles, I mean, you've got John Baldessari, you've got the legacy of Mike Kelly.
Just the legacy of Cal Arts in general.
The legacy of Cal Arts in general, another school that's here, which was really known for pushing the boundaries of conceptual art that is really not predicated on making at all. You don't really have to make anything if you don't want to, if you're a conceptual artist. It exists purely in the mind, or the art can exist in the mind, and it can take physical form in various capacities, but doesn't have to.
Yeah.
I was very opposed to this personally, and this is where it can get heated, I guess. I mean, I'm pretty polarizing this way. It's like I'm a classical violinist. I still play violin. I've played since I was 4. There's a real tangible thing to the word practice for me. And it might seem basic, but that's just sitting in a room and playing scales and shedding, for hours, and then you do it the next day. That's practice, and you build it, and that's practice. And artists say, "This is my practice." Show me what your practice is. I want to know what the tangible thing that you do every day in the studio, because that shows me that you're practicing as a verb. I felt like I was looking around in the art world and what was happening and where we were coming out of. Is this a radical position to take? Like, it seems so conservative, but it kind of felt like a response to something.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'll never forget listening to Helen Molesworth once as part of a talk say something to the effect of, I became a curator because I was studying to be an academic, and I would go home for holidays and have a really hard time explaining to my mother what I was studying or what I was doing. I found myself on a curatorial path because it was easier to explain.
Interesting.
And the more hindsight we have on how we embarked on growing and fleshing out our program, the more important it has become to us to be able to clearly have everyone from the director of the Museum of Modern Art to the mailman and everyone in between walk into the gallery and to be able to access the work that we show, take something away, and to have there be harmony between the language that describes it and what it looks like. And that coming out of a conceptualist practice or conceptualist lineage is different.
Yeah.
I think anybody in the art world has been through in the experience where they read a press release and they're like, oh man, I'm stoked to see this show. And you go to the gallery and you're like, is this the press release I read for the, like, doesn't square with what was written about this. You know, it's like, I'm looking at a show of what looks like a bunch of, abstract paintings that are gestural, and it's talking all about climate change. Like, is it about climate change or is it about the action of the human? And like some things, sometimes I'm just like, I would have written polar opposite thing about this.
Sure.
I think the other thing that sort of like goes into that and weaves our program together is that consistently our artists don't care much about what they think of the work once it goes out into the world. Like the work is really personal across the board. It's made from a really personal place. Everything is rooted in identity and, a certain set of value systems that each artist sort of maintains and practices. But once the work is out into the world, it's meant to talk to anybody that experiences it. Yeah. And so there's never been a sort of dogma associated with our artists insisting that work be read in a certain way. And that is a really generous experience when you go into a gallery. And that's always been really important to us.
I call that transcending the personal.
That sounds very sophisticated.
I just like that idea that like art has to like, it's a funny thing that art does because it's almost empirically so, all art is based on the identity of the artist because you can't escape your own brain.
Or your own time.
And so you're making art in your studio and it is deeply personal, but at some point it has to go out into the world. And when it goes out into the world, in order for art to live, it has to be interpreted. And the more people that can interpret it, the broader it has a chance to live, you know?
Yeah, I feel like I see that too with artists that we've talked to and just being in the scene more. It's like you create something, there's all of this energy that goes into that creation, and then this like just release. And like with the release comes like surrender to whatever. Just circling back a little bit. So the basic business model is kind of a 50-50 cut. And I feel like tell people as like Friday Heaters has become more of a thing and people in my life are asking me what I'm doing and I tell them about the art scene. Most people are surprised, like, wow, 50%, that's like so much money. The artist is getting taken advantage of. Can you explain a little bit like what all goes into the 50% to pull off?
We often offer like a Hollywood analogy here when people ask this question. Like a Hollywood actor pays, 10% to a publicist, 10% to a manager, 10% to an agent, 10% to, their assistant, 10% to their producing partner.
Lawyers.
All of a sudden you're at 50% or more of the salary of any given project. And while the gallery doesn't have, we don't have in-house legal. I'm sure some do. And we don't have in-house PR, but basically like we consider ourselves responsible for doing all of those jobs on behalf of the artist, even if we have to outsource it and pay another professional outside of our purview to do so, which is 50% or more. The financial arrangements really depend too on the production that's involved in any given artwork or any given exhibition. But in general, the gallery's responsible for all the expenses associated with producing and mounting an exhibition or work that goes to an art fair.
Shipping our work.
Up through, shipping it, moving it around, insuring it, storing it, whatever. On the whole, we work with our artists on a long-term basis. We generally have like a check-in, artworks never check out sort of style. We store works for our artists, as they want them to be stored. That's our thing, not everyone's thing.
So that means you're taking on an additional cost of storing.
And ensuring that storage.
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing that I will mention, which is more and more, we're not taking 50%. There's other parties involved here. So if we have a show that we're sharing an artist with a different gallery, let's say the gallery's in New York, we're not getting 50%.
Yeah.
We're getting 10,
we're
maybe.
getting, well, no, if we show a solo show with an artist, we may get a 40% cut and the other gallery might get 10%. But if it's a piece for a group show, we might get only, 10-15% of that cut. The other gallery gets the rest, and then the 50% goes to the artist. So by having the baseline of like 50% goes to the artist, kind of better, almost insurance for the artist that like other things can happen behind the scenes. It gives us more leverage to collaborate with other galleries, especially when the numbers start to get up there. I'm more than happy to take 30% of something if I've got the PR from another gallery also and their collaborative spirit, with regards to trying to place this work properly, do right by the artist. I'm totally happy to give them 20% to collaborate on that.
Or more, more. I mean, we've always taken the approach, again, with the amplification thing, where it's like, the amplification is worth money to us. So we'd always rather, especially given the limited nature of the inventory that we work with. Slow practices mean less inventory, means that when we are sending out into the world outside of our purview, it's important that it's, in the best context, in the best light. If it costs us 50%, we make those choices.
Yeah. How many artists can you kind of fit under your tent?
It's a really good question.
So we work with 24.
Okay.
It's a lot for a team of 4 people. And for the last 5 years, and I imagine for the next 5, we'll be laser focused on getting all of them sort of where they want to be. Name recognition, institutional placement, and working with galleries that are like a cut above ours. That's been a real focus for us and continues to be. And so we're not so focused on growing the program so much as we are just sort of concretizing what we have right now.
That said, if the perfect thing comes along,
I
mean, there's never, it's just not like something that we feel. We used to feel this like kind of real fervor to like, we got to grow.
Yeah.
We don't feel that anymore.
I think also programmatically, we're much more interested now in weaving in exhibitions with artists that are older, more established, that can add context to our artists who we still refer to as emerging.
There's always been like an art historical kind of through line through what we do, and we've always tried to do group shows that have more canonical figures kind of woven through, just to give more gravitas to what we do and to also tether it to history, because that's another thing that I think is very, specifically that we believe that we want to anchor our artists to history. They want to be a part of history. They're not interested in cutting the head off of lineage and saying like, no, I don't, they want to look, their predecessors in the eyes and say like, we can add this to the dialogue, which is something I find very fascinating and kind of humbling, to have to do that. It's easier to not do it, but to really try to do that is hard. So there's that. And now instead of just like having an artist that's further along in a group show here and there, I think we're kind of trying to focus on having a solo show by that artist, at least once a year, of some much more established artist that's going to kind of pull that discourse around our artists and give more of an attention focus to everything that we're doing.
And so with 24, I mean, how do you calendar that out in order to get through all 24?
We plan exhibitions somewhere between 2 and 3 years in advance.
Okay.
And generally the shows are sort of woven together based on material and time of year. And, we never want somebody to have 3 April shows in a row. So, we play with that a little bit. Also depends on who's doing what outside of our purview and when. We generally look about 3 years ahead. And as Adam said, we're trying harder and harder to kind of weave that one exhibition in a year with an artist that we might not represent, but that brings sort of dynamism to whatever we're doing on a primary market basis.
Also, now artists are at very different places. Kind of all 24 of our artists are at very different places, and a lot of them now are working with other galleries. They have other shows to do. There's art fairs to take into consideration. So if everybody can be kind of like on a cycle where they're going to have a solo show with us every 2 to 3 years at the gallery. We also have a viewing room space, so we program 2 shows concurrently, one in the main space and one in the viewing room space. And that viewing room space has been a really nice kind of stopgap, a way to kind of maybe an artist wants to do something a little bit more experimental, or they're trying to explore a drawing practice that that they want to show, but it would be weird to do that in our big gallery. They can do the viewing room show, and that can kind of be like a bridge to the next big show.
Okay.
And every artist is in a kind of a different place with that. So
yeah,
we're on the phone a lot.
That's better than maybe being on a computer all the time.
Yeah, it is. Actually, it absolutely is. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, where are you guys at on fairs these days? I feel like fairs have become something
question.
to be very easily criticized. Do you
Yeah, principally
think
by us.
more, less fairs?
Less fairs.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Our mandate needs to be less fairs, better fairs.
More quality, less quantity.
Also dovetailing with the pace that we work with and our artists work at, we can't satisfy 3 fairs a month, proverbially speaking.
Okay, it's like, that happens? People do that?
No, but
some people do.
No, there are galleries that do one fair a month, that are just on a circuit. Costs a lot of money to do that.
At our price point too, which is still emerging, and I suppose I can define that.
Yeah, that'd be great. That would be fantastic.
But we sort of think about emerging as like sub $150,000 retail. So, for the more expensive fairs, you're lucky to cover your costs at that price point.
Because those fairs cost
$40,000, $60,000, $80,000, $100,000 to participate in.
To have a booth.
To have a booth, to fly us there, to fly your staff there, to put you up, to feed people, to entertain people.
And it can be north of 100,000 if you're doing all that, and you have if you have a staff of 4 or 5, and you host a dinner, and you're bringing sculpture, and you need a gantry crane.
You're rigging marble.
You're making all the wrong decisions.
Yeah.
I mean, but the thing is that fairs claim to want these ambitious shows. They want these full elaborate installations, and as a gallery, if you do that, if you make some sort of really elaborate installation, and you spend a lot of money to get it there, you basically are narrowing the pool of people you can sell that to museums or extremely institutional level collectors.
Or you have to go in having already placed it, which is like a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But I think
then it's like, why are we doing art fairs in the first place?
Well, you're doing if you're breaking even, if you're a gallery at our caliber, at our level, which is somewhere between emerging and established, you are still sort of thinking about fairs as a marketing expense, essentially. If you're lucky to break even, then what you're really doing is cultivating clients. And if you walk away from every art fair with 3 new repeat great clients, well, then you've paid for the fair and more.
Yeah.
The big issue we're experiencing now in both participating in fairs and talking to our collectors is the collectors are fatigued from the fairs.
Right.
They don't want to go as much as we do or do not want to go. It's kind of like when you're sitting with a client on her couch and she's deleting every fair preview that's coming in her inbox without even opening it, and you're watching her do it. You're kind of like,
is mine getting deleted too?
You have to assume that it is.
Yeah, right.
En masse. And it's not the sexiest proposition to then go the next week and spend $100,000 to stand in a booth and may or may not catch people. And as the art market experiences whatever correction everyone's been talking about for the last 24 months, the elimination of fairs from the calendar is an inevitability as far as I'm concerned. They're just too many to.
It's the easiest thing for us to cut to get our budget in a better place.
Okay, yeah,
sure.
It's like a giant number, and you toggle it off. Other things you have to wind down, or like, I have to consolidate storage. I mean, these are things that take a lot of time and effort, and often the price that you're getting back on the back end for the elimination of it from the budget is not that great.
Yeah.
But for an art fair, it's like, I can get $60,000 back, by, and yes, somebody I can hear a director from an art fair being like, yes, but the opportunity cost. Yes. I mean, I don't think art fairs should go away. They're very valuable things. Even just having like a kind of trade fair environment for the art world is powerful. And there's always, if the fair is good, there's a vibe, people are talking and collaborating, and it's been a great place for us to even have collegial conversations with other galleries. But there are things about art fairs that are really good. It's just, I think almost objectively true that we hit a threshold point with them where it was overly saturated. There are too many and too often, and you dilute the good things that can come out of them if that is the case. And it is true that fairs are a bigger platform for us than just having shows in our gallery. It broadens the picture. It gets more people to see what we do from all over the world. That's good. Yeah. And I'd rather spend that money as the few dollars that we have to spend, as a gallery, like she said, as like an advertising instrument. It is so much more valuable than trying to hire a PR firm or, pay Art Forum to advertise. Those can be extremely expensive.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the optimist in me also would say that the more fairs there are, the more local they all become. And if you become savvy with who your local markets are that resonate best with your program, and you limit your fair schedule to those fairs, then you have an opportunity every year for a week or 3 days to really spend time intimately with those collectors, with that audience, with those curators. But that requires the galleries to be really intentional with where they bring what work. And I think we're still in the middle of whatever that recalibration is to intentionality. It's like nobody can afford any longer, from the lowest end of the market all the way to the top, to do everything all at once.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of who is going to be best at the intentionality game.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of the fatigue, which is like you go into a fair and people were having this experience of being like, it's the same galleries that that you're going to see, and they're just bringing kitchen sink. They're bringing anything that they can that is available by a collection of their represented artists. And then it's, I'm not saying that doesn't mean that there could be great works in there. There always are, but the experience for the viewer to just be like, if you're going to a lot of art fairs and you're like, do I need to go again to see this same booth with this same gallery with these same names? Like,
or it's like you go all the way to Seoul to see the same core iteration of a booth you saw in Miami 18 months before, and you're kind of like, well, this isn't for me. It's for a Korean audience that wasn't in Miami, but I am still here. Why am I here? It's just a matter of, I don't want to overuse the word recalibration, but I think not feeling like you have to be everywhere all at once, everybody from the artist to the collector to the gallery, is the thing that will make the fair thing.
I think you're kind of seeing that too. Let's say the big fair names, Basel and Frieze, with Frieze's acquisitions and them having Chicago, and everyone's wondering like, well, what are they doing with it? They're basically making regional fairs. Yeah. They're making more regional fairs, and they're trying to very much pinpoint, in the Middle East case, places with a lot of money that are underserved, and they're saying this fair is for you, because what fair is for the people in Doha. You can see their business model shifting to do that. There are still kinks to work out. I think the whole Paris-London thing is still very confusing for people. And it's definitely causing cannibalization of something, whether that's Art Basel, Switzerland, or...
coming out of London, I heard people really stoked that it felt like a regional British London fair. And I heard people really disappointed by the same thing.
Right.
It's like you're never gonna please everybody either, So some people saw that as a real asset.
Yeah.
And a really great way to navigate the London scene in a really concise way. And other people were really bored by it. And, it's kind of like...
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. You're going to have both experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of our job to be like, let's get more pinpointed. Let's just try and lean into
what do our artists need? Yeah. What exposure do they need? Where are the other galleries that we want our artists to show with? What fairs do they do? We go there.
Or museums in proximity to those places, because you do get, curators and museum directors, they do go to fairs.
Yeah, for sure.
They're walking around. We've had many conversations with museum professionals in fair contexts, and that's huge for us.
Yeah. So where does that then lead you in terms of those regions to choose?
We're sort of coming out of such a crazy time in the market.
Yeah.
Where whatever was hot would sell is no longer really the case. Across the board, our focus really needs to be on Europe, because I think our program really resonates with the European audience. That doesn't mean that the gallery can afford to do every European fair though. So
it's tough.
So to figure out how to kind of catch up to what is required involves other galleries. It involves all these other things.
And there's also the other thing that should be mentioned, especially because of the nature of what this podcast is. Getting into an art fair is not as easy as one might think. It is not an application that you fill out and then they say, great, pay us $40,000 and you're in.
Yeah.
I have said this many times and it's still true. Getting into art fairs that you want to get into, it is harder than getting into college.
Well, it's harder. It's harder than getting into college if you don't come from art world parents.
Royalty.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, we've this is something that we combat a lot.
If people know like name recognition and they know who you are, there's weirdly a lot of stranger danger in the art world. You know, like you would think that, oh my God, I got this great proposal. I got this great artist. They made work for this fair. You know, it's specific. It's pointed. Wrote a great essay, made a great rendering. You know, it's a lot of work. And then you see gallerist, who's your age peer, who happens to be, you know, from top collector family. They get in with a group booth that hasn't been considered at all. And you're like, wait, wasn't the mandate to be specific? And didn't you want to see this?
Oh, that's tough.
So I don't want to be bitter about it. I don't want this to come off as bitter because I'm not. I don't fault people for being born into collector families. I love those people. I love collectors. I think collecting art is very important, and it makes my business sustainable. So it's a luck of the draw thing, and that's fine. They should lean into that. They should take advantage of that. But it does make it really difficult for us because there's a finite amount of booths, right?
Yeah. Well, I also think too that we have put ourselves in this position, maybe not quite intentionally, but sort of like de facto by working with artists that work slowly. Like because there just isn't so much inventory, there isn't as much exposure. Therefore, there isn't as much sort of like crossover places where people might see the work, which means that we have to really bang down people's doors to get it seen. Yeah. And that has become more and more evident the more we've grown the gallery. And I think that that's the road that we have paved, and so that is our responsibility.
Okay.
There's a kind of like, I mean, it's pervasive in all of our culture, right? This like hype beast thing where you're like, you can feel like, oh, this artist has such like a fire behind them, like they're so hot, and that can be sustained by like a perpetual showing of the work. If an artist can make perpetually the work, right? Like and produce at a high enough caliber at a fast enough clip where that is like, but there is no such thing where that happens indefinitely for any artist. Sure. There's always a time where like they need to reconsider their practice in some way. They want to go inside. They want to, you know, they can't make what the market wants. They don't even know what the market wants because the market changes, because trends change. Yeah. There's an illusion, I think, of like a kind of perpetual fire that can be set under somebody. But
for you guys amidst this downturn, are there creative things that you think of or kind of re-strategizing that you're going through right now as you evolve the business model? Or we talked a little bit this summer, I think, a little bit about how you were approaching the summer. Or
we've always been best at relationships with both artists and collectors on a slow basis. We're not slow people, just to be clear.
Long-term relationship building.
But like relationship building has been very successful for us in terms of maintaining a very close circle of artists and collectors. So, instead of sitting in the gallery and expecting collectors to come to us over the summer, for instance, as you referenced, we've made a point over the last several summers to like basically not be in the gallery at all and go to where our clients are and just spend time with them. Yeah. Outside of the direct context of the gallery.
Which seems so smart to me. Like when we were having this conversation, for those who were not there, the audience currently listening to us, we swung by, Heater swung by, and I'm going to butcher Anthony's last name.
Miserandino.
Anthony Miserandino. Just scroll down on the grid on IG, everybody, you can see it. It was such an amazing piece this summer that we came by and did a little heat of the moment feature. But the three of us then we had a conversation afterwards about what you guys were up to in the summer, and I just thought it was so creative and made a lot of sense. Inevitably, these creative industries revolve around relationships. Maybe all industries do, but if the market cools off, where can you double down? It's like relationships.
Yeah, and the thing is that I mean, in any industry, but the big thing about selling art, often that is $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $60,000, it takes trust. You know, you don't want to buy something from somebody for $60,000 that you don't trust, or
especially in a market downturn.
or you don't know well. It's just and if people are slowing down to buy, it's like they're picking and choosing more of like where they are. So the summer is a time when you're not even necessarily like selling things to people, but like going to Aspen and going on hikes with people, going to Maine and visiting small collections and museums out there and talking to curators and just talking about art with people in person at a much more like low key, we don't have to be at a gala,
I think also to your point about sort of necessity is the mother of invention, right? Like doubling down on what we do gives the collector an added level of confidence in acquiring something because it's not to satisfy the market. It's been made for all these other myriad reasons. And I think that's palpable when if we're calling it a downturn, recalibration, whatever we're calling it, sows a degree of hesitation or sort of a reevaluation of why people are buying art in the first place. Yeah. And I think we've seen, the speculative approach to buying art among very young collectors come to a screeching halt over the last 12 months or so.
It's like a deflated hot air balloon.
So the hypey young collector that's trying to like
that really is looking at art as an asset class who is really wanting you to look them in the eye and say this thing is going to be worth 10x in 24 months.
Yeah.
Honestly, I blame ourselves. I blame the art world.
100%.
Like we are to blame for this.
Yeah.
Because
the art world is to blame for this.
There was, like the quote wet paint auctions, like to define that in the auction world, anything that's been painted in the last year that goes up to Christie's and gets sold for $250,000. They call that wet paint because it's basically wet. It's like, well, what do you mean $250,000? It's brand new.
Yeah.
They were driving that because Sotheby's and Christie's and big auction houses, they're a bottom line operation. If they can make $250,000, they will.
Sure.
So we were incentivizing the kind of...
What's so interesting about that is the specialists who really care about the art, they don't want to see records for 30-year-old artists. They don't want to see that because it... Are we allowed to curse? It fucks with it fucks with their metrics.
Yeah.
It fucks with their market building.
And that's why that's happening now where they're like everyone's looking at their books and they're saying, oh, Christie's isn't doing so well. So they're making millions of dollars. A recalibration, that's why people want to call it that. It's a better way to put it because maybe it's more accurate to say that we're not going to be selling paintings that were made in a year for $250,000.
I will also say that like the rate at which our art world is demanding historization of contemporary art, like historicizing the contemporary as it's happening, as it's being made at this accelerated pace, as works are leaving the studio, and having that attempt to be matched by slapping retail or resale prices on things at the same time is a new problem for our era.
Yeah.
And it's really treacherous business. Whatever Gallery X or Dealer Y or Art Advisor Z can sell something for is the number. That's not real. And that's over for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually really good for the art because I think it will weed out a lot of artists and also professionals in the art world that got into it for reasons that aren't sustainable.
Yeah.
And that's okay. We've seen a tremendous, for instance, coalescence between the luxury business, the luxury brand business and the art world, or the corporate sponsor world with the art world.
Yeah.
And there's real value in that for some artists. And it really suits the way they work for some artists. But it doesn't suit the way it works for some other artists.
Yeah, it's a whole range.
It's a whole range.
It's a huge spectrum.
And that's okay too. And there are some galleries that are better at amplifying those aspects of practices. And there are some galleries that aren't. And there always will be. But the sort of differentiation between the purpose behind the practice or the sort of like impetus for the practice, I think will continue to be articulated as this recalibration, whatever period we're living through, kind of shakes out.
That's just not sustainable. You can't have everybody land those museum spots and everybody accelerate to those prices.
Yeah. And you see the fatigue of, museum people, there's fatigue of contemporary curators who are just like, we can't, the amount of times you hear now from museums, like, oh, our storage is full, and it's just like, so this era of like, buy one, give one to a museum, this whole thing is like, it really was testing the boundaries and structures, so to speak, of what a cultural institution is supposed to do.
Yeah.
And you're seeing a massive kind of reshuffling in the museum world too, of kind of looking in the mirror and saying, what is our institution? What is our collecting mandate? Are we all just switching to contemporary art? Because a lot of these institutions were not contemporary art museums.
Yeah,
and they just started accepting it because that's the cool thing to do. And I just, want to correct one, myth for any new collectors out there, and please keep collecting art because it's really important to support artists. But we spend a lot of time with 80-year-olds and 70-year-olds and people that have collected art for a long time that have incredible collections.
Love the veterans.
They're amazing people. And they really care about art. And not to say that, a lot of them have sold things at auction. Like, there's a time and a place for everything. It's totally cool to buy and sell art. Like, we sell art, for a living. So it's fine.
Yeah.
But there's a time and a place. And what's interesting when you look at a lot of these people's collections and what they'll tell you, you could just see it when you look at what's in their house. Yes, they might have a Roy Lichtenstein, but they also have 60 other artworks that you've probably never heard of because they were at the time doing the thing and they were in the scene and they were collecting the scene and they love that work. They live with that work too.
Yeah.
And you can put together a trophy collection. You can go back in time. You can say, I want to have the collection with the Ed Ruscha and the Lichtenstein and the Robert Motherwell and the Frankenthaler. And you could do all that. And you can even do it for contemporary art. You can say, I want the bucket list collection.
Yeah.
But the people that really are in this for a long time, that get to the point where they're in their 80s and they look back and they're like, why do I have 500 or 1,000 objects in my collection?
Yeah.
Those people, those are collectors. Those are people that obsess over things and they want to learn about an artist because they care about what they're doing and it helps them expand their world and think about the world differently.
Yeah.
When you have a lawyer who's interested in like seeing something differently other than through the eyes of the law, they look to art to pull that out. And that's cool.
I love that.
Yeah, I think the other opportunity that this moment really offers our generation of collectors, especially as people mature out of their 30s into their 40s, start having kids, have other bills to pay, their focus gets sort of fractured into all these other places, seizing on a quiet moment transactionally to actually reignite a conversation around what patronage in the arts even is, or what it is for our time. It's not always about just buying the thing and putting it in your home and showing your friends and repeating the artist's name. It's also about how does that all weave into this thing as a reflection of me, as a reflection of my values, as a reflection of my politics, as a reflection of all these other things, and how does that then lead me to how I spend my dollars philanthropically, what curators I get close to because I see resonance in their ideas, like what museums I champion for those same reasons. And that is like very at risk of being lost with the 80s and 70-year-olds that we spend so much time with. On the whole, how to teach the millennial generation and Gen Z about like having that value in a time where we've just insisted that the individual is the thing. Is a really great opportunity because people are going to slow down on how much they spend and when they spend.
Yeah.
And in that absence, as gallery owners, we have to believe that people still want to see it, even if they're not buying it. So what do you talk to them about when they come in to see it? If they're not buying it, you talk to them about all these other things. And that's actually...
Go to the museum with a client. Yeah. Just look at some art. And go to the museum and don't read the wall label. What do you think? We're looking at it.
Yeah.
You might know who it is. You might not know who it is.
Yeah.
Just what is it giving you?
Yeah.
Those are valuable conversations that I think are being lost under a kind of market fixation.
Well, it's also being lost under this pressure, I think, socially to not be vulnerable enough to either ask questions because you don't know the answers or experience something in real time and answer those basic questions if you don't know the answer. Like
something that you're not supposed to like.
100%.
Didn't get approved by somebody
100%.
more significant. Yeah.
Totally.
What got me so interested in art in the first place was like, I mean, this is going to sound really corny or stupid maybe, but I would ask questions like to the art. Like I would be in like conversations with an art object. And yes, it doesn't talk back at you, obviously, but there's deep, profound things that happen in that interchange.
Yeah.
But if you're moving really fast and you're trying to like see what's hip all the time, you're never going to get to the point where you can actually sit down and do that. And that's comes into a whole other thing with attention economy that I'm scared shitless of. But
yeah. It's cool. I think if you read through like the Art News Top 200 Collector issue and you see the interview snippets that, the magazine does with collectors, 10 in every 25, the advice from the octogenarian is spend a year looking at art, spend 5 years looking at art, and don't buy anything.
Yeah.
Nobody ever, our generation ever follows that.
Yeah.
And that could be because of an anxiety around access, an anxiety around missing the boat, an anxiety around keeping up with the friends, whatever it is. But again, this moment now really opens up an opportunity for a lot more people to feel a lot more comfortable doing that. And that's, I think, great.
Yeah, it kind of fits with like the whole Friday Heaters ethos.
Totally.
I think so.
Yeah, because your whole project is actually getting people excited about it.
Yeah, and like not knowing
and not know what 100%.
Well, no, you're doing great.
Not you,
I think you're doing great.
But the people watching it, it's like the postman and the museum director. It's like everybody can get excited by your excitement.
But Heaters is a weird hybrid actually though, because it does like lean into this like shortened attention economy. It's one of the reasons why I'm excited about this podcast.
Yeah.
Because it's long form, and it's a little bit different.
Yeah,
it's a little bit more like in depth,
and
I think it's really tough because social media wise, everything tells you, smaller snippets. People don't have they can't be bothered to watch something more than 10 seconds or whatever the hell they say. So you have to do that, but you have to kind of drive the excitement and the point. The reason why I say it's like a hybrid model is because my whole thinking of Friday Heaters or Heaters in general is just like, you are getting people excited so they can be inspired to go spend that time and look at art on their own some. Maybe they go to the gallery after they see something and they just kind of look because they find out that they can just do that, which you can, by the way.
Yeah, they're free.
Right. Yeah. I know. I love that. I mean, I know I'm going to hammer this probably on all of the podcasts going forward, but I know the art world has a history of some sense of exclusion and being opaque and hard for people to access. I do make the argument coming from the music world, like most institutions and museums are free. On any given weekend in LA, for example, there's going to be a gallery opening where you don't have to buy a ticket to go to it. Oftentimes there's free wine and beer.
Yeah.
The artists and their peers and collectors are all pretty much in the room at any given place at any given time that you can access. There's no green room. There's no barricade and backstage. Yeah. It's been a very fun world for me to dance in coming out of music. The whole art world is just great for like the 30s and 40s.
Yeah.
It turns out that being inquisitive is free, and being a connoisseur, like you don't have to pay to be a connoisseur of something. You just have to spend the time and the intellectual energy invested in it. And
you do have to pay to be a collector.
Right.
That does cost money. There's a barrier to having it in your house, but there's a lot of room for people in the art world that don't have the money to collect who are intelligent. The art economy, so to speak, is huge.
I will also argue that there has to be another moment, and maybe we're approaching it, where great collections are cobbled together at the expense of fancy cars and expensive vacations, and it's really just a value systems thing. You have to have money to be a collector, but you also can put artworks on payment plans and work with your galleries. And
I was just going to say that start small. It's like if you maybe you like love this thing, it's like talk to the gallerist. They might give you a discount. They can definitely offer a payment plan. And like there's a lot of the stories of these like early collectors. A lot of them will roll their eyes at like contemporary prices, which I find to be really funny. They're like, I used to buy an Andy Warhol $400, and it's like, and now it's worth, $5 million. But that the ethos of that is still alive, so to speak. Like if you're really looking and paying attention, you really love something. We understand that people have salaries and they get paid out at a certain time. Like we don't need to like bankrupt you for an artwork. There's a collector class, in other words, that really hasn't been accessed because they think it's like everything is $50,000. It's like that's not really the case, and you can work towards achieving that thing.
Yeah. Some of these price points still are just staggering for most people.
Yeah.
So how does the industry, maybe you can kind of, whether you want to dip into some of your own thinking with your own business or just stick with more kind of broad strokes, like future avenues to activate the next generation that don't involve numbers above $5,000? Like, is it, how do we do that?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, at the end of the day, I would say this too. I defend the existing industry because to have a brick and mortar, to have a space, to put on really exciting shows, to partner with artists, like, it costs a lot of money. So inevitably, I can defend the standpoint that, like, prices have to be at a certain level to make this all work. But at the same time, you look at the underserved community of enthusiasts and patrons who are never going to spend that kind of money on collecting art, but would love to participate, maybe more than just being a body in the room.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating question.
I think that, think about this a lot, but like the answer to that question used to be starting with things like prints, multiples, and photography.
Right.
Somehow along the way, I don't know if it's because of ubiquity of the camera or the ease at which something can be printed or a misunderstanding of what printmaking is or some combination of all of those things.
Or like a market FOMO, because I think people are like, I don't want to print, I want a painting.
Yeah.
Right. Like an education in the wrong way or something. There's been a sort of turnoff of those medium. And like, when we, again, talk to this octogenarian class of collectors that we've cultivated so dearly, all of them started with prints.
Yeah.
When we got married, we had to choose between a couch and an Ellsworth Kelly print from Gemini Gel that was $600, and we chose the print and the Kelly, and it still hangs in our living room next to our Picasso painting, and we didn't have a couch for 6 months.
Yeah.
And obviously Ellsworth Kelly prints are no longer $600, but they might be $1,200.
Yeah.
And $1,200 now is far less than $600 was in 1963 or whenever that was. So it's from my perspective, it really does come back down to like a values thing.
Okay.
Where like our generation is so comfortable on the whole, people who are in this milieu couldn't possibly dream of sacrificing a couch or a TV at the expense of an artwork.
What's interesting though about that, and I think this is a real generational divide, is that they were buying that Kelly instead of the couch with the express intent that they knew that they were going to grow their careers. They were going to
100%.
stick to their,
so true.
They were going to like get that next salary bump. They were, this vision of like,
future,
and a lot of them don't hit their stride collecting until they're in their 60s.
Yeah.
I mean, most of them. Most of these people do not get like their trophy pieces that they aspired for 30 or 40 years.
Until college is paid for.
Okay. And that's like not something in our generation's mindset. I know it. I don't feel that way either. I'm like, I don't want to wait till I'm 60 to own the art that I want to own. That sounds insane. But I do think that they were very comfortable with that. And so there's something in this too that I find really fascinating, which is the struggle between right now, a lot of people are talking about the generational wealth shift. So a lot of trust funds are being activated. A lot of wealth is transferring from those
baby boomers,
whether they're alive or not. A lot of them are just still, like now it's time for these people in their 30s or 40s to get this money. And that's when you come up against this kind of weird logjam, which is to say that education component that we're talking about and the enthusiasm, the inquisitiveness, what makes art alive when you ask questions of it and when you want to live with something or want to talk to an artist or a gallerist or your friend about why this thing is exciting you, when that becomes completely occluded by, oh, it's $30,000. Should I spend this? Should I not? Even if you have the money now, it's kind of this weird question, right? So it's like, in a sense, we're trying to put the cart before the horse.
Or it's like, or should I like forego the $3,000 work on paper by the same artist at the expense of the $30,000 painting because I know that the resale value of the $30,000 painting is a better buy, but I don't want to spend the money and the work on paper seems lame and I can't do anything, so I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to sit on my hands and just buy the TV instead, or whatever.
Or like not even like this idea of like listening to your heart. Again, sounds corny, but you might be like, I really like that work on paper.
Yeah.
Like I like that drawing. That drawing sings and I like it. And that's cool. Like, I don't know how to get this message out to people. I mean, hopefully the podcast helps, but just, it's so much cooler to go into a person's home, a collection and think like, like I'm looking at this sculpture right here that doesn't, I mean, I'm sure that's not a, you know, somebody that I would know, but it's cool. It's an interesting sculpture, and it reminds me of the Pacific Northwest, and it makes me think of all kinds of things that are not in the world of, you know, that I'm in. And that's your thing that you live with, you know? That's cooler to me. Those kinds of collections that are idiosyncratic and like, oh, this person wanted to get not the Liechtenstein that is like with the Ben-Day dots that I've said Liechtenstein a lot in this podcast. I do love Liechtenstein, but he's not like the only artist in my brain. Let's go like, oh, this person really loved this Rembrandt etching. And nobody, you know, who lives with a Rembrandt etching? Yeah. Maybe you think like, it'd be crazy to have Rembrandt painting, but his etchings are actually really cool. And that's something that I would love to live with. Yeah. And it's not something that I would buy as like a market play. Sure. But, you know, this is not what collecting is, right? Like I said, sometimes you're going to hit something that it would be great if you can make $1 million in 10 years off of this thing. Fantastic. You know, I'm so happy for you. Skip your way to the auction block. But that's not what makes this exciting. Yeah. And that has to be important. That has to be first, or else this whole thing is ass backwards.
Can you just talk a little bit about what is it like as being husband and wife owning and operating an art gallery? Is it easy? Is it like, is there superpower additives to that? Or
I think there are definitely superpower additives.
Okay. Can you describe?
There are definitely superpower additives to that. Adam and I, we've always often said, share the world's greatest combination of complementary skill sets. Our life would not be possible if we were not a couple, because we couldn't afford to be responsible for other partners outside of the business. From day one of first our friendship and then our partnership, we've put every last dollar, minute, ounce of energy back into the business and continue to do that.
Just imagine if we were not in the same business together, and that one party was trying to do that and the other party was like, it's 7 p.m. and it's dinner time, and
it just wouldn't work.
So
the fact that you both are like all in and are willing to kind of make those
that said, I feel like that's actually that's like a narrow pool of people. Like I wouldn't say like, yeah, dude, everybody should just be partners with your, you know, business partners with your life partner. It has to be, it just has to align. And when it does, it's really wonderful. Yeah. But if it didn't, I could imagine that would be hellish. Yeah. It's just for this particular industry too, like when so much of our time is about our relationships with our artists, and all of our travel is centered around what museums we're going to go see. Even when we take like a vacation, like we both joke that like none of us we're not great beach people. We love the beach, but like you go get the umbrella, you sit with a book, and then like you read the book for an hour and a half or so, and then you look at each other and you're like, what do we do now? You know, like we're like, where's the museum? Where's the museum? Like we gotta, like, there's always this hunger to like see art everywhere we go, and it dictates our whole life. But it's so much more broad than it sounds like when you just say that. But if you seek art everywhere you go, you just find yourself in these incredible places with amazing people doing amazing things. And that's something at our core we really share. So it makes that whole thing work. But if you didn't have that alignment, I think this would be impossible.
How would you describe, I guess, some of the individual superpowers that you each contribute?
Well, from the very beginning, our like jobs have been fairly well segmented in terms of logistics, bookkeeping, client management. But where we both really overlap is the artist liaison, artist management part. Yeah. And that's why we got into it.
Okay. You know? I mean, he wants specifics.
You want specifics?
Well, I mean, you guys, so you both share some of the A&R, like I'm going back to music.
Yes,
so like,
yes. A&R is where we overlap. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. But I would say the like oil that makes the gears turn in the machine, that's Meredith. Like logistics and making sure things stay on schedule, and keeping a calendar, and planning for things, and also her ability to host is second to none. Okay. And just like paying attention to all the fine details. Okay. So very Meredith. Okay. I think much more kind of like ekphractically, you know.
Okay.
I have a much kind of more cloud web brain.
Yeah. Meredith, how would you then describe Adam's
this
described
is
you?
good. Yeah,
Meredith,
this
how
is
would
now
you
you
describe
Well,
Adam?
it's interesting because, yes, cloud, ekphractic brain for sure. But also, I mean, Adam's responsible for all of the production, like exhibition production, exhibition design, managing, anything that's material related.
Okay.
Framing, how we're going to install the 5,000-pound sculpture in the gallery. How, why is this painting by this artist from this year cracking? Oh, it's because of XYZ pigments that are interacting with each other, or it's because, drying times were in conflict. He knows all that stuff, and our artists really use him as a resource for that as well when it's needed. We've never paid anybody to do photography for our gallery.
Cool.
Adam has always done it forever, and it's gotten much better as, he's gotten more expensive cameras and better at the job.
Very nuanced skill, actually.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
believe it.
take a picture of an artwork.
Yeah, he's also the only gallerist that will spend like 6 hours on the phone with a painter, like tweaking the color of a particular JPEG because that's what they demand. But when there's
only painters, though,
only
they're the only ones that are that finicky.
So yeah, anything to do with actually the presentation of the art in the gallery from a logistics perspective is all Adam. I might keep the calendar on track to get all those things accomplished, but he manages all that. It started to shift now that there's employees, for sure. And I think that's interesting and exciting for us, again, to be doing at this moment where there is this quiet, a relative quiet.
That's another really key thing, by the way, of how we're taking advantage of a downturn market. Quite literally, we hired a director who was a byproduct of the Blum implosion.
Oh, yeah.
So
closing. The Blum sunsetting.
Yeah, sunsetting.
I believe
Yeah,
the
that's
term
right.
was what was used.
Very,
Yeah.
very
Sure.
kind. Very kind.
Sure, yeah.
Sure.
Either way, we now have a
Yeah.
great director
Yeah.
in Sage, and she has great experience from Blum, and that was a big opportunity for us.
Yeah. Rad.
And we jumped right on it.
Cool.
So we'll see. We'll let you know, in the next year or so, we'll be able to tell you what the complementary skill set looks like in a third person. Because
Yeah.
this is Baby's first podcast.
Oh, sweet. Wow.
Yeah,
News. Congrats.
Yeah.
It is good to like expand how
Wow.
we like think broad picture about the gallery, and we have more time to kind of talk about that now that we have a great gallery manager and a gallery director.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Wow. So exciting. Oh my gosh. At the end, yeah, just let's keep going. The extra bonus question I wanted to circle back to: if we're all competing for attention, and there's so many artists, so many people making art, why couldn't an artist make a limited run of things that were like $500, $1,000, some sort of limited value placed on them, or something that allowed people to participate?
Yeah.
I think that there's a real market for that. And I
Yeah.
think that it takes somebody in a moment like this to take on a business like that, to figure out how to produce high quality artist editions for, a low price point. Part of the real challenge here is production cost. Everything is expensive.
And it's a risk. I mean, I'm thinking right now of an artist that we work with, Eamon Monahan, who has been making these lamps, these really cool artist lamps, and he builds all of them. It's kind of exactly what you're saying, limited run. I think he made like 15 of them. He put on his Instagram like, this is $500 a lamp, but they're handmade lamps and they're really freaking cool.
They're basically a sculpture. He's just calling them lamps.
Yeah, we would like, it's if without the light component, or even with the light component, if it was in our gallery, it'd be a $5,000 sculpture, right? So it is that thing. You're getting it at $500, but it's still a risk for him, right?
Sure.
Like there's no such thing that doesn't come with some sort of risk. Like he's got to make 15 of these. He's got to go online. He's got to like put himself
Figure out
out
how
there.
to ship them.
And then he's got to figure out how to ship them. And
crazy,
then like by the time he actually ships 15 of them and, figures out how to like get out on the website or whatever, it's like he actually might be making not a lot of money from any of that. But as a goodwill gesture to get people excited about buying art is a cool thing.
Here's the thing. Prints are cool.
Yeah.
And photography, when it's well made, is cool.
Yeah.
And
That
like,
could be a whole podcast, by the way.
it
The crisis that photography is in currently.
Yeah. It's its
I have a
own
lot
conversation.
of words on that, but we're going to abstain.
Yeah. Believe it.
just because it's made in a multiple doesn't mean it's not valuable.
Sure.
It particularly has valuable when you look at it every day and get something from it. Posters are sick.
Yeah.
Like vintage French posters that are sub $1,000, like they're all over the internet and they're cool. And you can learn about what your sensibility is by living with them and looking at them. And maybe you do that when you're 29 or 32 or 35. And then when you're 70 and you make 5 times as much money, you buy a painting. It's like just, but you have to trust the reason that you're bringing things into your home.
Yeah.
So
Heat.
it's very hot.
Adam, Meredith, thank you for joining us on the
Thanks
Friday
for
Hears
having us.
podcast. You're some of the early additions with us, and we are grateful that you're willing to roll the dice. And
Thanks for having us.
We're honored.
Sweet.